Our guest for this podcast is one of the global thought leaders in the coaching and mentoring industry, a multi-billion-pound industry that has created opportunity and challenge in equal measure. Jonathan Passmore is Professor of Coaching and Behavioural Change at Henley Business School and Senior Vice President at EZRA Coaching. Jonathan is also a prolific author, having written over 40 books on coaching and related subjects. He brings a unique and special expertise to understanding the industry and its nuances. He straddles the academic and practitioner worlds, bringing a holistic perspective to key issues. Perspectives that he shares with us in these podcasts as we explore the future of coaching and how artificial intelligence will likely impact it and the millions of coaches around the world. Jonathan observes how coaches need to reinvent themselves in the age of technology, which is revolutionizing the world. He comments on the limited research available to evidence the impact of coaching and how that can be remedied. The discussion also examines why so many coaches do not use psychometric measures, when they are often highly relevant to the coach's work and can add significant value for the client. This is a unique opportunity to listen in to an enlightening discussion. We welcome Jonathan to the Talking Toughness podcast.
We've all got opinions, and that's okay. We want free speech, we want diversity of thought, but as we do that, that isn't evidence. That's just opinion. And we've all got opinions. I've got opinion about the shopkeeper who's down the road and what she's like, but it's not evidence. I've just got one experience, and actually, to make a judgment about whether that shopkeeper is honest or not, we would need better data than my personal experience of 3 years ago when I was shortchanged buying a pint of milk. That is not enough evidence.
I'd like to link what you've just been talking about with the start of the conversation and yet another book that you wrote, Jonathan. That's the Psychometrics in Coaching. And you wrote that in 2008. And the reason why we're raising it, obviously, John and I have got a deep interest in psychometrics and particularly the mental toughness concept. In conversation with another mutual colleague, Zoltan in Hungary,
yes,
he told us about a study that showed that something like 80% of coaches don't use psychometrics. And that really surprised me, because if there's one discipline that could really use psychometrics, that should be coaching and mentoring. And then our experience is that, yes, that's pretty much in line with our experience, but even the 20% who use psychometrics often use either one psychometric measure, thinking it fits everything, or they use the wrong psychometric measure. But psychometrics add a possibility in terms of evidence gathering, because a good quality psychometric is reliable, is valid, and you should be able to, using a normative measure, that is not an ipsative measure, you should be able to measure differences as a result of coaching practice. Why is this a black hole?
I would say things have got worse rather than better over the last
2
years since we did the book. And I think part of the reason is that the coaches who are coming to the coaching industry are less likely to be individuals with a background in human resources or psychology. So those who have had backgrounds in psychology or human resources often have some experience of psychometrics. So they share your view, Doug, that this could be helpful in a conversation to help individuals understand themselves more and thus become more choiceful in their behavior. You referred to John. John always talked about coaching being about developing personal responsibility and helping people to become more self-aware, and through those two aspects, become more choiceful. And I try and stick to that idea, hold that in my head, because fundamentally I think that's what coaching is about. John was absolutely spot on. And psychometrics are a great way of helping people to understand how they are, and the different lenses, using a variety of different tools, helps you to see yourself through those different lenses. They're just one way of seeing ourselves. And sadly, people are doing it less. And I think that for me, the tipping point, and I've got no evidence for this, having talking about evidence, maybe I should feel uncomfortable talking in this way. But for me, I feel one of the significant points has been this movement from HR and psychologists to general coaches, people who have a wide diversity of backgrounds. But the other one has been our movement online. And I think that many of the tools that we used to use, psychometrics being one of them, but I'd often use cards or constellations or a flip chart or even just a piece of paper working face to face with people. All of that has gone because the medium of digital encourages us to have a conversation-based, word-based interaction. And that sharing that you get of a piece of paper in front of you has disappeared, or at least is not as significant. Now, some of the digital platforms, I think, are making really good progress in this area. So some of them do use a behavioural-based instrument. So at EZRA, we're certainly doing that. But I take your argument that wouldn't it be great, where it's appropriate for clients, to have a wider use of different psychometrics. So whether that's around resilience, whether that's about derailers or other features, and to enhance coaching. I still think that we're heading in the opposite direction from that. And in the same way that we're heading in the opposite direction from evidence-based coaching, people are fixated with ICF or EMCC coach competencies, tick the box, done that, lovely. And maybe that's a shift from being a high touch, high quality, high price conversation where you have a tailor who is making the suit for you, to one where it's an off the peg conversation. And it's the real focus is shift as many as you can. So I hear coaches talk about how many hours that they've got, how many coaching sessions they can do in a day. And so when you commoditize that, one of the things that you lose, because price comes down, is that let's spend some time thinking about different lenses about who you are and how you show up in the world. And psychometrics are a great way. If we've got a year of working together with a senior leader, that is a feature of those conversations. If I happen to be doing online and I'm doing 6 conversations in a day, I'm just moving through them, and psychometrics has no role to play beyond whatever the platform offers. Or if you're not on a platform because you're using your self-employed coach, but you're still trying to do 45-minute sessions and you're trying to do 5 in a day, there's no place for psychometrics, because it's just do as many as you can, churn them out.
No, I agree there. And again, our experience, or actually a little bit more than our experience, I have addressed groups of coaches and asked the question, why don't you use psychometrics, and which psychometrics do you use? And one of the saddest responses, which links to what you've just said, is if I use a psychometric, I'll get less hours with my client because I can get to the client understanding themselves more quickly using the psychometric. So it's kind of a cynical approach emerging.
Wow. That's very worrying, isn't it?
It is, I think, and it does concern me.
I sort of measure my success. It's a proxy. With the fewer hours, the better.
Yeah.
When the client keeps coming back to me, I've not enabled them to reach a position where they are able to step away and be their own person. I'm creating a dependency, and I've certainly, read well-respected coaches talking about preparing coaching session 35 through 42. And you think, what are they doing? Well, of course, they're generating a huge amount of revenue. That if you've created a dependency, 1 a month of that, I know you're into year 3 and year 4, but you've not created an independent person. And that's what I believe coaching is about. It's about helping you to stand on your own 2 feet. Now, you might come back at a future stage as you transition into the next role, but it's not about creating the dependency. So short for me is better. 3 sessions, 4 sessions, 6 sessions, great. And if psychometrics helps in that process, it's something that we should be using. But I think it's about the quality of the coaches and having a more psychologically rather than competency-based education.
completely buy that. In January, I had a LinkedIn online spat with a coach in North America who posted something about how great it was that he changed people. And I said, your job is not to change people, your job is to show people how they can decide how to change. And he disagreed with me. But it's taught me a lesson. I'm never again going to be involved in a LinkedIn spat.
I've had similar exchanges with people, and it's just people have their own views. They're welcome to them. I don't share that perspective. I'm on the same lines as you, Doug, on this, that our role is to facilitate insight, help individuals to become more choiceful through that self-awareness and personal responsibility. And psychometrics are a fabulous tool for helping bring a deeper understanding of who we are and how others see us in the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the greatest coach in the world, but I do see that psychometrics provide a lens and a framework through which you can explore the client, but also I think usefully brings a third party into the conversation because it's not you not necessarily discussing something with the client. You're saying, well, here, this is somebody else's perspective. Let's look at that.
Absolutely. And when it is only the client in the room, that's the only story that matters. We work with the evidence that they bring. But that self-awareness, many of us are deluded. We believe ourselves. We were just having, before we kicked off, a conversation about fantastic football players and who was the best. And clearly in a sporting context, self-confidence plays a significant part in performance and is a feature, I'm sure, of leadership and of actors and overall performance in many walks of life. But we also need to be grounded in reality and understand how others see us, experience us. And psychometrics, particularly that 180, 360 type tool, helps individuals to get that feedback to then ground their self-perception and connect it to the reality of how others are experiencing them. We might think we're the most brilliant comedian, but then I ask my teenage girls and they say, no, Dad, you only ever tell dad jokes.
I always counter that with saying the jokes are for me. Like, as long as
that's what I say.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a dad response.
Yeah, I say the same to my students as well, because it's funny. Cloughie said before, like he found that when he got to the end of his academic career, the students started finding him funny again. Because he said when you're young, they find you funny because you connect with them, a little bit. And I'm at that sort of stage where there's no connection. I'm just this sort of middle-aged guy who thinks he's funny. But then when you get a bit older, and this, what Peter was saying, you become that kind of slightly mad professor who's quirky. So they find him funny again at that point.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm reaching that stage, John. But I sort of feel that when I was young, then I laughed with them. Then they didn't laugh, and now they're just laughing at me.
Now, as long as they're laughing,
That's what I think. That's what I think.
I'm interested then, Jonathan, in terms of, I think we're all on the same page that there's a variety in terms of quality of coaching that's out there. And we prefer offering good quality. I like the phrase they use in the sort of health sector of kind of make every contact count, try and make something meaningful. So essentially you're less needed further down the road. But if I was to talk to a decision maker at a particular corporation to offer some leadership training to middle or higher managers, how can I sell that when I know I'm competing against people who are promising the world for offering kind of this superficial level stuff? How can I make my pitch win out against that?
It's a very difficult challenge, particularly when many buyers are relatively immature in the sense that they don't know what good looks like. And some buyers are simply buying coaching as a hundreds and thousands dressing for the cake they already have. It's a sort of, well, we should have coaching in our strategy, so we'll sprinkle a little bit of that on, and we do a bit of this, we do a bit of that, and we do a little bit of coaching. I think for those organizations that are really seeking to drive team and organizational performance, they have become more sophisticated, and they do start to think about what are the metrics that we want to measure. And so for those organizations, data becomes critical. And the data is no longer, how did you as the coachee feel about your coaching? Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was a 10 out of 10. Well, when you don't have a normal distribution, which is what the reaction of most clients' coaches are, they're all clustered at the 9.5 and 10. It's a little bit like Uber taxi driver ratings. Of course, they're a nice man or woman, you give them a rating, at the top end, unless it really was a terrible experience, and those people then get filtered out.
Yeah,
so most coaches are really, really good in the sense of the experience the client has. But does it make a transformational change? And then that's about identifying what metrics that's important to the organization. Do we want to improve our talent pool? How are we measuring that? Do we want to reduce employee turnover? Do we want to reduce absenteeism? So you might have metrics around those that an organization, certainly large organizations, collect. You might think we want to grow the competencies of our leaders. So having some sort of competency-based assessment might be important. Clearly, from your perspective, resilience, well, that'll feed through into stress-related absence, employee turnover. So measuring that and seeing if there is a change will be a useful metric for an organization to have. So really good organizations, I've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, have shifted the debate towards, let's not just appoint a group of people to come do some coaching. It's how are you measuring the impact of this? How can we collect the data? How can we collect data with you that demonstrates a sustained impact for our organization? But there are only a handful, no, that's wrong. There are only a relatively small portion of organizations, mainly large organizations, that have that sophistication in the way they're thinking about procuring coaching. The other 80%, mainly small organizations, are still at the end, at the edge of how were you coachees finding it? Oh, it was fabulous. Oh, well, coaching's worked. Good enough, is that?
The people who are buying you in are interested in the impact.
Absolutely right. They're spending their money, they're spending their customers' money, and customers and shareholders want to see impact. And so we need to then think about not only supplying a pool of good coaches, but we need to be thinking about the data that they and we as the provider of that coaching service can collect to evidence the journey that pool of people have been on. And even better, we can compare it with a group of people who haven't been on that coaching journey. So maybe they look back the previous year, but we know the problems of doing that. The analogy I often give is you've just spent £1 million on coaching through the period autumn 2019. You know that 2020 is going to be a fantastic success. You're in the airline industry, and then suddenly passenger numbers drop. What did coaching do to us? Well, of course, we know it wasn't coaching at all. There are external factors that can impact organizations. So comparisons over time can always be tricky. So you want to be running the studies at the same time. But there have been coaching studies that have been done. An AI study that compared AI with human coaches. One was done in 2018. One was done during the lockdown period of 2020. The AI aspect was then measured while people were in lockdown, and it found similar results to the period of 2018, 2019. Maybe that wasn't surprising because nobody could go out. So I was very happy to chat to an AI bot because I couldn't talk to anybody else. But if I had a human to talk to, maybe the results would have been different. So research is complicated, and we need to have a level of sophistication as readers in understanding what this data is telling us and being careful in interpreting this and then generalizing it to other populations or situations.
The generalizing bit is certainly something I come up against quite a bit, where I think one of the most common things that come up, and it's not just coaching, it's actually lots of psychology, and it's also a lot of management in general, is the generalizing me a sample of one because this is how I experience the world. Well, surely you do too. And for that reason alone, I would encourage coaches to make sure that they get really good coaching.
I
Coaches
agree.
to do
And this is
psychometrics.
this is the shopkeeper problem, isn't it? Just because I found the shopkeeper on one occasion being a little
Mm.
bit questionable in the way that they handled their cash, is that true that they are corrupt and fiddling every customer? Probably not. It's probably me. But and we as humans often generalize from one situation to how that individual then is.
Mm.
It's a human tendency. We label people, sadly.
If you get into coaching, you're you're not really that normal. You're not really
Thanks, John, for the
representative.
diagnosis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not really
I'll take that to my
representative.
therapist.
It's interesting when we do the mental toughness scores because we use standardized 10 scoring, and most people are surprised when they're in the middle. Um, and then you go because there's that allure of thinking that I'm special in some way. But then equally in behaviors and the way that we judge other people, we then start thinking that we're normal. In sports coaches, the first thing I always say to sports coaches is remember that you're not normal because most people who play sport don't go into coaching afterwards. So it's funny. I have this guy I used to work with he would get so annoyed that players would sit in a sort of performance analysis session before training in their kit, wanting to get out on the field, watching video clip after video clip, having to write things down in their diary, and they weren't concentrating and they didn't want to be there. And I was like, of course they don't. Why would they? Because they're normal people. Like you were the freak. So when you played, you were in a room of 30 people and the clips were being shown on the screen while the coach was talking through what went right and wrong. And you were that into it that you didn't notice the other 29 people bored out of their mind while you were doing it. So kind of just getting people to see like, well, where am I on that curve when it comes to this particular piece and recognizing that there's that allure of thinking I'm special in some way, but then paradoxically, we go and talk to other people and think we're in the middle and expect them if they're getting stressed about that, why are they getting stressed about that? Must be without thinking, oh, maybe I don't get stressed about things and they get stressed about it because most people do.
Yeah, that's a great observation, John. One I absolutely agree with.
Jonathan, last question, I suppose. If you were to talk to coaches in general, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the world changing so dramatically. What is the one thing that coaches should be doing to prepare themselves to be better coaches? Or maybe there's two things,
Okay, the two things are, I think that coaches should not shy away from technology. So I think that they need to understand the motor car. They need to, that was my analogy from earlier, they need to understand generative AI and digital platforms. Most coach training still exists in the bubble of 2017. And so it's all about competencies. Most of the work is done face to face. And we're pretending that actually most people are still meeting face to face. AI, digital platforms haven't emerged. And that is disappointing and I would say naive. So we need to recognize that most of our work is now taking place on a platform. What does that mean? And secondly, we need to recognize how AI works. And we then need to think about how it might help us as coaches. For example, one way that coaches can leverage AI is through not just generating content, but using it as a nudge tool to encourage people to engage in intersessional activities, IA, not AI, IA, intersessional activities. So these are the activities that I always encourage my clients to do between coaching sessions. Coaching isn't one conversation a month and then you forget it for the other 100 hours. It's about coming back, daily, weekly, thinking about or engaging in some reading, some reflection, a diary, or some experiments that you test out and evaluate to then bring back for an accountability conversation when you're back in the room. So intersessional activities, AI can nudge and say, how you get on with this? So you could set up these sort of tools. So that's the first one. The second one is to understand, and I think we are still thinking through this, but understanding what makes the difference between AI and human coaching. And we talked a little bit about humor in our conversation so far. So if you've ever asked generative AI to come up with a joke, they're even worse than John's jokes. John and I are both funny in comparison to ChatGPT. On that scale, we're abnormal compared to ChatGPT. And that's because AI is not very good at telling jokes. And the reason why AI is not good at jokes, even though it's synthesized every joke that is out there, is that humor is situational and relational. So it's something that you laughed at that comment, John, because we have had an hour of chatting and this comment comes at the end. If I'd said at the beginning, it wouldn't be funny. So it's about timing and relationship. So when do you bring in a particular remark and how's it linked to the relationship that you have? AI lacks that capacity at the moment to do that. So humor is often one thing. I talked about it not being empathy and creativity, but I do think it is lived experience. It might be career experience. It might be about our spirituality. It might be about our faith. It might be about the sensitivity in navigating ethical dilemmas. And that those ethical dilemmas are relational, situational, contextual. The AI provides a homogeneous mush towards. It's not wrong. It's just not very tasty solution, not a very tasty food. And so thinking about those aspects of what we as coaches should start to better understand, think more about, and start to amplify in our coaching practice. So becoming the essential human is what we should be doing in coaching, dialing up our humanity, not just trying to follow the GROW model.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Well, I think that's a great place to sort of wrap up, I would say, isn't it?
It is. Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes,
It's a
that was
pleasure,
great.
Doug.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you, John.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah.